there, I'm back, and today we have another episode of Beauty and the Bibliophile. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Leah. If you're not new here, thank you for returning. As often as I can, I do a series called Beauty and the Bibliophile, where I do my makeup and I tell you about the latest book that I've read. If you don't know what a bibliophile is, don't worry. It is a lover and a collector of books. That's me. Today's book isn't a book, it's a story. It is the original story of Sleeping Beauty. It's also called Brier Rose, and it is from the Brothers Grimm. Now there's no exact date on when this story came out, but we do know it was the early 1800s. And I got this story out of the complete collection of the Brothers Grimm. So if you are thinking about reading this story and you don't want to know anything about it, don't watch this video. If you want to know the story but you don't want to read it for yourself, then this is a great video for you. You can hear the story and watch me do my makeup at the same time, because that's what I do here, because it's fun. So if you're ready to hear the story of Sleeping Beauty or Brier Rose, stay tuned. Okay, so the story of Sleeping Beauty or Brier Rose. And this came out in the early 1800s. Also, if you're curious about any of the products that I'm using, they will be listed in the description box below. So a long time ago, there was a king and a queen who every day said to themselves how much they wish they had a child. Now one day, while the queen was bathing in a river or lake or something, a frog crept out of the water up onto the land, and it told her that within a year her wish would be granted and that they would have a child. In fact, that they would have a daughter. And the frog was right. A year later, the queen had a little girl, and the king was so happy and excited that he threw a huge feast when the baby was born, and he invited all his kin, his friends, acquaintances, and he invited the wise women of his kingdom because he knew that they would be able to bestow blessings upon his child. Now there were 13 wise women in his kingdom, but unfortunately he only had 12 place settings, so one of them had to stay home. But the feast was a grand event, and at the end, all of the wise women blessed the child with a gift. One gave virtue, one gave beauty, another gave riches, and on, and so that the child had everything a person could want. Now, after the 11th of them gave their blessing, all of a sudden, the 13th comes in the door, the one that had been left at home. She comes walking into the party, and she wants revenge for not having been invited. Without saying anything or looking at anyone, she says, "The king's daughter shall in her 15th year prick herself with a spindle and fall down dead." And then she just walks out without saying anything else. Now everyone was shocked, but the 12th wise woman still hadn't given her gift. She's like, I can't completely undo this evil sentence, but I can soften it a bit. And she said, "It should not be death, but a deep sleep of 100 years into which the princess shall fall." Now the king, who of course wanted to keep his child safe, ordered that every spinning wheel in their kingdom should be burned. And meanwhile, all the gifts that the wise woman had bestowed upon the princess came true. She was beautiful, she was good-natured, she was modest and wise, and everybody loved her. Now, it just so happened that on the princess's 15th birthday, the king and queen were out of town. And the princess was a little bored, and she was wandering around the castle from room to room, just looking around. And she came to an old tower, and she climbed the stairs up the tower, and she came to a little door that had a rusty key in it. And she turns the key and the little door springs open, and inside the room is a little old lady sitting at a spinning wheel. And the princess was like, "Oh, hello." She's like, "What are you doing?" And the old lady's like, "I'm spinning." And the princess is like, "Well, what's spinning?" Because remember, spinning wheels are outlawed in the kingdom. So she's never seen one. She doesn't even know what it is. And she wanted to try it for herself. And so she's playing with it. The old lady's showing her. And of course, she pricks her finger on the spindle, and the evil decree was fulfilled. And she falls down onto a bed that was right there in the room. And she stayed there and laid in a deep sleep. Now this sleep extended to the entire castle. Even the king and queen, who had just gotten home as this was happening, and it extended to the entire court. Even the horses in the barn fell asleep, and the dogs in the yard. Even the pigeons on the roof fell asleep, and even the flies on the walls. I'm going to be using an appropriate palette. Now around the castle there began to grow a hedge of thorns, and it grew higher and higher every year until it covered the entire castle and you couldn't even see it anymore. And over the years, rumors sprang up about a beautiful sleeping Brier rose in the castle. And she was obviously called this because of the Brier Patch growing around the castle, and she was the rose in the middle. And from time to time, a prince from a distant land would come across the Brier Patch and hear about the rumors and think that they were brave enough to go in and rescue the sleeping princess. But none of them were able to succeed. They would go into the Brier Patch and get stuck on the thorns and never be able to get out again. And they would die a miserable death. Now after many, many years, another prince came by, and he heard an old man talking about the Brier Patch and how supposedly there was a castle inside with a beautiful sleeping princess named Brier Rose, and that she had been asleep for 100 years, and that the entire court, including the king and queen, were in there asleep too. The old man had heard from his own grandfather that many princes had come through the area and tried to get through the hedge and rescue Brier Rose, but that none had been able to, that they all died a pitiful death. And the young prince was like, "Well, I'm not afraid. I'll go in and wake the sleeping princess." And the old man, tried to discourage him from this, but he wouldn't listen. Now by this time, the 100 years were up, and when the prince came to the edge of the Brier Patch, it was covered in beautiful flowers, and it parted on its own and let him through. And in the courtyard, he saw the horses sleeping, and when he went inside the castle, he saw the entire court asleep. And then finally, he came to a tower, and he went inside, and he saw Brier Rose asleep. He thought that she was just so beautiful, he just couldn't help himself, and he stooped down and he gave her a kiss. And when he did, she opened her eyes and looked at him sweetly. Then the prince and Brier Rose went down into the great hall where everyone was, and they had all woken up and were looking at each other in astonishment. And they saw everyone wake up. They saw even the horses in the stables awake, and the dogs in the yard started wagging their tails, and even the flies on the wall started to buzz around again. Then Brier Rose and the prince were married, and they lived contentedly for the rest of their lives. The end. Let me finish this look up really quick before we move on. Okay, now with these old fairy tales, I'm never exactly sure sometimes what the lesson is. I feel like this version of Sleeping Beauty is a little bit more about the prince than it is about the princess. So I really got 2 lessons out of this. One was, don't let some thorns keep you from the rose. Something you want may be difficult to get, but that shouldn't keep you from trying. And another thing is, timing is everything, because it didn't really seem like the prince that ended up rescuing Brier Rose really did anything except show up at the right place in the right time, because it just so happened when he got there, it was the end of the 100 years. And that's what really woke her up in this version, not the kiss. So yeah, I really love these old fairy tales. They are very different though. Couple questions. What was up with the frog in the beginning coming out of the water to tell the queen that she was gonna end up having a child? But then that frog never came back around. I was expecting to see the frog again, but didn't. And then also, why would her parents, knowing for 15 years that this curse was gonna become manifest on her 15th birthday, why would they decide to go on a trip and leave their daughter home alone, knowing this is possibly going to happen? Yeah, I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't have planned a trip around that time. Anyway, if you are interested in reading this, I will link the book that I read it out of. It's the complete collection of the Brothers Grimm. And yeah, I'll put the Amazon link in the description. It's not an affiliate link, I just put it there for your convenience. And if there are any books that you would like me to cover on this channel, I do all kinds of books, not just fairy tales. Leave it in the comments and I'll look into it. Make sure and give this video a like if you did like it. It's how I know what kind of videos I should be making and what to be spending my time on. Make sure and subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss another fairy tale. I'm going to be doing at least one more. And remember, don't let the thorns keep you from the rose. And also, timing is everything. And I will see you in the next one. Bye! And I got this story out of the complete, but the 12th wise woman. Then Brier Rose and the princess were No.